So can we now rule out the idea of an outright ban on Bitcoin in the US? Where do you see Bitcoin in the next year, and where do you see Bitcoin in the next 5 years? Okay, so let's focus on this banned issue, because that still has been a lingering concern for some. We talked about Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund founded by billionaire Ray Dalio. He has invested in crypto personally, but as we said, now the fund is taking a first step to allocate to crypto through an external vehicle. But Dalio has also said that governments would outlaw cryptocurrencies if they become too successful. Now we've got such widespread adoption, and as you're saying, in this executive order, 1 in 4 households in the US has crypto. So can we now rule out the idea of an outright ban on Bitcoin in the US?
It's too late. It's simply too late. If they wanted to, then they should have banned it back in the day. I think now there's too much momentum, too much network effect. 1 in 4 households are holding it. And the technology has really evolved. I think it would have been a mistake to ban it back then. And I think now it is completely impossible. I think now the race is not to ban it, but the race is to embrace it.
So you're taking that off the list of Bitcoin existential threats. No longer an existential threat to Bitcoin.
0% chance of banning of the United States banning Bitcoin. 0% chance, in my opinion. It's off the list of existential threats for Bitcoin. But tightening of regulation definitely going to happen, and not only going to happen in the United States, but going to happen all around the world. There is now a race around the world as to who can accept it and who can lure the most talent, because most countries are starting to realize that there is a lot of money to be made in blockchain right now, through taxes and tax collection. And I don't know if you read the article, but in Israel, they managed to get $92 million or something from one person. And the whole country basically said, if we got this from one person, every day that we're not collecting taxes here is a problem. India, which was originally thought to try and, or originally there was speculation that they were trying to ban crypto, basically did a bar turn and said, it's not banned at all, but there's just a very high tax. And so what countries are realizing is that this is actually a huge money maker, not only now, but in the future. If you can attract the smartest minds in the world, driving probably what is the biggest technological revolution in the world, everybody's fighting for that. Dubai also just raised their first set of crypto legislation, or the first framework. So countries are starting to compete, and they're starting to compete in any way that they can by dropping taxes. So for example, in Portugal, there's no taxes on crypto. Dubai, 0 tax. The next thing is making banking more friendly, because, there's been a lot of friction between crypto and the banking world. So many banks shut any accounts that were connected to crypto. But what we're seeing now is that the banks are actually starting to accept this, and they realize that, if they do accept this, this might actually be a good thing for the bottom line. You saw that with Goldman. You said it yourself. Goldman put through their first Bitcoin option, OTC Bitcoin option transaction with Galaxy the other day. JP Morgan, which was vehemently against Bitcoin. You all remember Jamie Dimon saying how bad Bitcoin was. And now JP Morgan is trying to lead the Bitcoin and Ethereum race. So I think that there's a massive shift happening from institutions, from countries. And I think it's not about who can ban it now, but who can adopt it the quickest and the most responsibly and make the most money out of it.
Okay, so as we discussed, the increased regulation is a positive for institutionals in many ways, because it encourages them to get involved. They now have more clarity on where things stand. We talked about Goldman, we talked about JP Morgan. So what does this mean for institutional money coming in? Because again, it sounds like another big bonus for Bitcoin, but we're not seeing it reflected in the price as yet.
Well, I think we are seeing it reflected in the price. I remind you that at the end of the last cycle, or at the beginning of the COVID correction, Bitcoin went as low as $3,000. Today we are $40,000. So we're a 13 multiple of that. That hasn't happened with retail money. I think that there is now the right infrastructure for institutions to move into Bitcoin successfully. There is there are custodian solutions. There are people that understand how to buy it. There are multiple places that they can buy it. They don't have to buy it with these OTC or over-the-counter transactions. So I think that right now, to us, the institutional thing has happened. It will continue to happen, but we're kind of looking beyond that now and saying, okay, we know the institutions are here. Now it's just a case of how quickly they can convince the investment committees to actually start investing in crypto, and how low they're going to move down the table of cryptos that they can invest in. Because right now, what you're hearing about in institutions investing in Bitcoin. You're not really hearing about institutions investing in Ethereum, or let's move down in XRP or Binance or Luna that we spoke about earlier.
Well, there's a Grayscale fund, I believe, that's about to be launched with regards to altcoins.
So yes, there are multiple. There's a Grayscale Ethereum fund, Grayscale over multiple funds. But today they actually made an announcement that they're launching a smart contract network fund excluding Ethereum. So it's got tokens like Cardano, Polkadot, Algorand, Stellar Lumens, the rest escape me. But I mean, it's got all of those in one fund, and it's for people who want to invest in smart contract network platforms, but don't want to invest in Ethereum because they already have an Ethereum fund separately. So Grayscale will continue to make these products. And speculation is that the Grayscale GBTC product, which is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust product, which is currently the biggest holder of Bitcoin in the world, there is speculation that may become the first publicly traded ETF in the United States on Bitcoin spot. That's the speculation. We know that the Grayscale team and DCG, the parent company, is fighting really hard to do that. And speculation is that they will be the most successful ones. And it kind of makes sense because for a long time, they've been managing, buying, storing, trading Bitcoin successfully. They've got a track record with a fund that's been as high as $20 billion or something like that. So they've got all the experience in the world to do it. And it would kind of make logical sense that the SEC looks at this and says, well, with one flick of a switch, we can protect investors. Bear in mind that fund today is trading at a 27% discount to net asset value. So maybe there's a trade here. And maybe the trade is, if you want to buy Bitcoin, go and buy the GBTC at 27% discount to net asset value and just hold it for enough time for one of two things to happen. The first thing that could happen is that it gets approved as an ETF. And if it does get approved as an ETF, well, there aren't many ETFs that are trading at a discount to net asset value. So that's the first thing that could happen. The second thing that could happen is that it doesn't get approved as an ETF, and then someone else gets approved as an ETF. And if that happens, well, then effectively they would probably have to liquidate the trust and pay out all the assets. And if they did that, you'd get your net asset value back, which is Bitcoin. So for me right now, the best trade in the market for anyone who wants to buy Bitcoin is actually to buy GBTC. And to be honest, I actually took a position in GBTC this morning because I saw Bitcoin break out of some key levels and I kind of felt like I missed the trade. But then I thought, hold on a second, I can actually buy 27% cheaper if I just bought the GBTC, which is exactly what I did.
Okay, so holding on to GBTC, but I believe, Ron, that you said that you also hold on to your Bitcoin, that you're essentially a hodler.
I must say, I don't sell Bitcoin. I haven't sold Bitcoin in years. I haven't traded, I haven't sold Bitcoin in many years.
So our viewers always like to have a long-term outlook for Bitcoin. Where do you see Bitcoin in the next year? And where do you see Bitcoin in the next 5 years?
So a lot of it depends on two things. A lot of it depends on what's happening in the financial markets and what happens with this war. I mean, if we get to talks about World War III, I don't think any kind of risk asset is going to be able to weather that. But in the absence of that...
Listen, if we're nuked off the planet, I don't think it really matters, right?
It doesn't really matter anymore. I think there's, if you watched Bitcoin for last year specifically, Bitcoin strongly tracked the NASDAQ, strongly tracked growth stocks and tech stocks, which is kind of counterintuitive because if anything, Bitcoin should have probably tracked gold. It's much more similar in properties to gold, but the market is pricing it as a risk asset, where it should be pricing it like gold. And so I think the next couple of months may be quite telling for Bitcoin, because we will see whether the market prices it as a inflation hedge slash store of value like gold, or whether the market continues to price Bitcoin, in my opinion, incorrectly, like a growth stock. So I don't believe that Bitcoin should be priced as a growth stock. It doesn't have any of the characteristics of a growth stock, other than the fact that it's gaining users like a tech company. It's gaining network effects like a tech company. But other than that, I think it's much more suited to be a store of value than it is to be positioned as a growth stock. But I guess that's the beauty of Bitcoin, because it's not confined to one thing or another. It is a technology, and it is a store of value, and it does feel like gold, and it does feel like a tech stock. But ultimately, if you were to ask me, Bitcoin should be the store of value. It should be the reserve currency, and everything else should be the growth stocks around it. So all the altcoins to me are the growth stocks, and Bitcoin should be almost like the USD reserve currency, but not USD. USD, what it used to be in the 1870s or 1880s, right, when it was backed 100% by gold.
Which is what we said we're seeing the likes of Luna do. Terra and Luna using it as a reserve currency. So you see it as a store of value asset, but you still haven't given me a 5-year price outlook.
I mean, I've learned one thing in my career, and that is that, you make price predictions. You've got a 99.999% chance of being wrong. And then when you are wrong, everybody's going to say, you made a wrong price prediction. I can tell you that it's going to go, the price is going to go up. Where it's going to end, no idea. I used to make a lot of price predictions, but they kept making them into memes when they were wrong. And when they were actually right, the 1 or 2 times that they were actually right, no one ever mentioned it. So I think I've learned better than to make price predictions.